Hello. Today we are going to take a look at the different temperature scales and how to convert between them. Use this video along with your guided notes page to do the notes and examples. So we have taken a look at the three different temperature scales and looked at thermometers. So in science, we mostly we'll see things measured in the Celsius scale. So we're used to measuring like our fever or the temperature outside in Fahrenheit. So to give you an example, body temperature in Fahrenheit is 98.6. That's our normal body temperature. The equivalent of that in Celsius is about 37 degrees Celsius. So they are very different from each other, but we'll talk about what they're the Celsius scale and then the Kelvin scale are based off of. The boiling point of water in Fahrenheit is at 212, and that is one of the reference points for Celsius. So when Celsius came up with this scale, they set boiling water at 100 degrees Celsius, and then freezing water, the freezing point of water is 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and in Celsius it was set at 0. So with these two reference points, they took their thermometer and marked it at those two spots and then made 100 equal spots in between, and that's how the Celsius scale was developed. So they had like a blank thermometer, put it in ice water and marked it where the alcohol was, and then, or at that time mercury, and then put it in boiling water and marked where that was and said that was 0 and 100, and then added 100 or all the markings in between. So there's 100 Celsius degrees difference between boiling and freezing. In Fahrenheit, it's 180 degrees difference. All right, so a little bit different situation here. Now, the other temperature scale that we will see is Kelvin. Kelvin is very similar to Celsius in that there is a 100-degree difference or 100 unit difference between the freezing point of water and the boiling point of water. However, Kelvin starts at what's called absolute zero. So way at the bottom is absolute zero, that's 0 Kelvin, and that's where all the motion of the particles stops. Okay, so in Celsius it would be negative 273 degrees Celsius. Oops, I wrote that wrong. Negative 273 degrees Celsius. And then for Fahrenheit, we'd have to calculate that. We can always do that down here. So this is called, Kelvin is called the absolute temperature scale. It has no negatives, so it starts at 0 and then only goes up from there. So it's the freezing point of water in Kelvin is 273, and then the boiling point is 373. So we are going to see Celsius and Kelvin the most. That's what we typically use in science. There are some reasons why we have both and why we use both for different situations, and we'll see those as we go through the year. All right, let's take a look at some equations here in terms of calculating Celsius and Kelvin and Fahrenheit and converting between those units. So Celsius and Kelvin is our easiest one. 273 degrees or units is what they're off from each other by. So if we have something in Celsius and we want it in Kelvin, we're going to add 273. If we want to solve for our Celsius temperature, we would subtract, and we have Kelvin, we would subtract 273. So let's just take a look at two examples using just that equation first. So here we have what is 92 Kelvin in Celsius. So we have 92 Kelvin, we want the Celsius. So I'm just going to plug in my 92. I'm going to leave the degrees Celsius because that's what I'm looking for, plus 273. So if we want to isolate this variable, we need to subtract 273 from both sides. That would cancel, and then 92 minus 273 gives us negative 181, and that is our temperature in Celsius. So if we are at 92 Kelvin, we're going to be at negative 181 Celsius. All right, so that's very, very cold. Very, very cold. Okay, so we can also go the other way. I'm using this 92 for all of them, so we can just kind of see how the same number might apply to each. Okay, so in this one we have 92 Celsius and we want it in Kelvin. So since we are looking for Kelvin, we're going to leave that. I've got 92 Celsius and we're going to add 273. So 92 plus 273 gives us 365. So our Kelvin temperature is 365. All right, so 92 Celsius, which is already a pretty high number, right? If boiling point is 100, we're almost to boiling point. That's going to be 365 Kelvin. All right. Now, to go between Fahrenheit and Celsius, we need a little bit different equation. We need this one. So they are all the equation, if we want Celsius, we're going to take our Fahrenheit temperature and we're going to go ahead and subtract 32 from it. Once we have that, then we're going to divide that by 1.8, and that will give us our Celsius. Okay, so we're going to do that one. We're going to do number 4 first and just plug in from there. So we're looking for Celsius. We have 92 Fahrenheit. So if we're looking for degrees Celsius, we are going to take 92 Fahrenheit, subtract 32, and we're going to take that answer and divide by 1.8. So we can do this all at once in our calculator. We just need to make sure that the numerator, that operation is done first, because it's subtraction. We have to make sure those parentheses are done first. You can subtract in your head, or you can type it in. If you type it in, we want to make sure it's in parentheses. And then we're dividing by 1.8. So 92 minus 32 in parentheses divided by 1.8. And we get 33.3. Now, with that repeating threes, you can just round it to 2 decimal places, leave it as 33. We don't put the line on top in science. We just round to a specific number, and that is our answer there. So if we have 92 degrees Fahrenheit, that's similar to what the temperature actually is today outside. That's equal to 33 degrees Celsius. All right. Now, if we want to rearrange, if we want to solve for Fahrenheit, we can rearrange this equation. So if we were to do that, so if we started with our Celsius, I'm just going to do the process over here. And we want to isolate that Fahrenheit. First thing we need to do is multiply by 1.8 on both sides. So we're going to have our degrees Celsius times 1.8. And then that's going to equal our Fahrenheit minus 32. So then we need to add 32 to both sides. So what this side will end up looking at like is 1.8 degrees Celsius plus 32. Okay, so we want to make sure we multiply that and then add 32. So 1.8 times our degrees Celsius plus 32 is what we want there. Okay, so we can do that here. So we want Fahrenheit. So we've got 1.8 times our degrees Celsius is 92 here. And then we're going to add 32 to that answer. So 1.8 times 92. I like to just enter that in my calculator and get an answer. And then I add my 32 to that answer. So 197.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we're at 92 Celsius, that's a pretty high number. Again, that's very similar to our boiling point of water that's getting close. It's going to be 197.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can see that's almost at boiling point here. So we can use this to kind of check our work and see, does that make sense at where we are? For instance, our 92 Kelvin, that's going to be way down here. So we should have a pretty negative number on Celsius over here. If we were at 92 Fahrenheit over here, that's going to be less than body temperature. We're going to be in the 30s for Celsius, which we can see we got for our answer down here. So we can use that this chart at the top to kind of help us. But that's how we can solve for any of our temperature conversions. Okay. Now, if you have something that's given in Kelvin and you want to get to Fahrenheit, you go through Celsius, right? Change it to Celsius first and then do your Fahrenheit. It's a much easier path to take. So that's our notes. You've got some quick practice or some practice to work on after this, and we'll check it in class. Thanks, guys.